time time for the after show, and I think Joe is really excited here. We're going to talk about our favorite cartoons.
Yes!
And I'm going to let Joe go first.
I want to start with the Laugh Olympics, Will. As a kid, Hanna-Barbera had cartoons, and they had the Laugh Olympics. And I will, to my dying day, I will know that I was never a really rotten. I was always more either a Yogi Yahooey. I just kind of felt drawn that direction, but I was never a really rotten. A fantastic cartoon show that was a lot of fun. It parodied a lot of the stars contests that you had for sports back in the day, where you'd see, your favorite TV show stars going and performing really inane sporting events and competing against one another. But this was one that I loved. I loved Laugh Olympics. I love Hanna-Barbera cartoons. So fun to watch. I had to just suck up the fact that Quick Draw McGraw has hooves and not hands, and still has guns, and I don't know how he fires guns if he's got hooves, because he's a horse. But fantastic. Hanna-Barbera cartoons were a staple of my childhood, and I don't know. I mean, they were just fantastic. They were that good.
Okay, my favorite cartoon. The Adventures of Letterman. It was a segment of the Electric Company. It was incredible. Faster than a rolling O, stronger than silent E, able to leap capital T in a single bound. It's a word, it's a plan, it's Letterman. It starred Gene Wilder, Zero Mostel, and Joan Rivers. That's incredible.
That's a pretty good crew. If you've got it, that's a pretty good crew.
Look it up on YouTube, The Adventures of Letterman. You can watch episode after episode after episode. That's what I'll be doing this afternoon.
Absolutely. And I guess if we're going to talk about cartoons, I got to give you a little bit of background. So as a kid, I grew up in an era where, for the early part of my childhood, Saturday morning cartoons were everything. I mean, every Saturday morning it was turn on cartoons, eat a bowl of cereal, watch cartoons. And then once it got to like Soul Train or whatever, you'd turn it off and do something else. But as I grew up, that actually shifted away, and the cartoons that I got to see were on cable networks like TBS and TNT. So before I get on the school bus early in the morning, they would have Looney Tunes. And they'd have Looney Tunes for 2 hours, 3 hours, and then sometimes there'd be a Gilligan's Island in there, but there'd be a lot of Looney Tunes. And so for me, I got to experience not just the cartoons of my generation, the Smurfs, the Snorks, the stuff like that. I got to watch cartoons from a previous generation. I got to watch, everything from Pepe Le Pew to the original Bugs Bunny cartoons from World War II to those old classic Looney Tunes. And so you can't go anywhere talking about that kind of stuff without talking about Looney Tunes. And frankly, whether it was a merry melody or a silly symphony, you could not do better than watching Looney Tunes.
I love Bugs Bunny. Maybe the best single episode of a cartoon ever. What's Opera, Doc? It's incredible.
Is that the one where he puts the Viking helmet on and sings?
Yes. Magic helmet.
Magic helmet. My favorite was a World War II era Looney Tune where there is a bad, I forget what the word he uses, and I can't remember what it is offhand, but it's the personification of a glitch. And so it's trying to break stuff, And it's, oh no, you can't do that. And Bugs is actually the one being taken advantage. He's the one getting all the bad things happening to him. At one point, it's got a mallet and it's hitting this bomb on the front with a mallet. And of course, Bugs sidles up and says, "What's up, Doc?" And he goes, "Oh, nothing, just trying to explode this bomb." Anytime you could turn those things on their head, they were great, because Bugs Bunny, best cartoon character of all time. I really think that.
Probably.
I mean, does more things. You can't go anywhere. Duck season, rabbit season, duck season, rabbit season. It's just classic. You can't go wrong with that kind of
thing. Be very quiet.
I was just talking to my girlfriend the other day, and she was talking about, those monsters must live such interesting lives. Now put your patties in the water. I mean, there were just so many good ones that they were just fantastic. They're just fantastic.
The Roadrunner was awesome, too. And in fact, the Saturday morning Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Hour, this is it, the height of heights. It was just awesome.
I loved watching the Roadrunner cartoons, because I think the Roadrunner cartoons were pretty meta for cartoons. I mean, they understood that they were cartoons and had no problem playing off the fact that they were cartoons. The ones where the two kids are watching the Roadrunner and one talks about wanting to be a psychiatrist, there is nothing more meta than coming out of the television set into a living room where two kids are watching the cartoon that you were just watching. It's a brilliant thing to do. It's that next generation of cartoon making that was just fantastic.
Oh, and there was an episode where, and I may get some of the details wrong here, but there was an episode where Bugs Bunny is drawing the cartoon and torturing Daffy Duck.
Yes.
It was incredible.
Absolutely.
I always liked those cartoons much better than the Disney cartoons. The Disney cartoons were just silly, and the Bugs Bunny cartoons, they were a little more adult somehow.
They were edgier. Now, I will say that there's only one Disney cartoon that, without fail, if it ever came on, I would watch. And that was when Goofy was explaining how to do things. How to go camping.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. How to work around the house. Goofy was my favorite Disney character. He's the writing that went around Goofy was always fantastic. And I think, frankly, that's one of those where it's a self-parodying thing. In the 1940s and 50s, the how-to movie video, the film that you'd play to troops in a room or in a workplace where they're trying to explain your job, that was something that a lot of people were dealing with, and so to have something that parodied that in such a clever way was always positive.
Now, my wife has given me a nickname of a cartoon character. She calls me Fred sometimes, after Fred Flintstone, because when we're in the car and she's driving and we get close to where I want to get out, I have a tendency to go ahead and open the door.
Okay, so
I will open the door as we approach our driveway, and then we turn into the driveway, and so, but I loved the Flintstones and the Jetsons. Both of those were terrific.
Agreed.
And and some of these cartoons, I got the impression that some of the humor was probably over the heads of some of the children who were watching them.
Absolutely.
Because they just weren't old enough.
Right. It makes them more timeless. They're too busy looking at the sight gags and the slapstick and stuff like that. I think none of them were more like that than like Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Oh, yes.
Rocky and Bullwinkle, when they're you've got Boris and Natasha, you've got, what's the matter you, and stuff like that. It's just hilarious. Even today, it's funny. And as a kid, you don't get all those jokes. But I think that's part of the joy of it is, there was a reality when these were being made that the kids in the house were of a range, and there was probably a parent there. And so you'd have a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, maybe a 12-year-old, and all of a sudden they're all watching the same show. Well, how do you cater to those groups?
Now, did you like any of the serious cartoons like Johnny Quest?
Johnny Quest was okay. It actually, I never made a hard segue into the anime type cartoons.
Oh,
no, those are serious cartoons. But like Speed Racer, which little different. They were fun. Johnny Quest was fun, but I never delved deep into them. Even whenever I got older and everybody was into, to the manga stuff, and you're like, oh, I'm not really into that, guys.
Right.
But that's part of my generational crossover too. Is we have the Saturday morning cartoons, we have the classic cartoons, and then for my generation, we had the Nickelodeon cartoons. We had stuff like Doug, which
well, the best thing that was ever on Nickelodeon actually wasn't a cartoon. It was You Can't Do That on Television.
Which is a great show. That show, okay, so we're not going to talk about too much because that's not a cartoon. That's not a cartoon. But I think that does bring up a truth in this, is that there was a transition point that you realized that kids shows didn't have to be Howdy Doody.
Right.
They could have some serious moments to them and still be funny for the whole family. And I think no show does that better than The Simpsons. The Simpsons as a cartoon has addressed everything. I mean, anybody who's anybody has been a voice on that show. They've done amazing things. They parody everything. Everything gets made fun of in such a way that, kids like it, adults like it.
Right.
And there are people who can watch it and go, I remember that. This is just a great show, a point where serious and funny cartoons kind of reconverged into a unique kind of presentation that is the cartoon sitcom of The Simpsons.
The Simpsons was I guess, is it still on?
It's still on.
The Simpsons was and is one of the best cartoons ever made.
Right. And I think it's a slightly more highbrow version of stuff like Family Guy or American Dad or South Park, which I think in a lot of ways exists in parody to the mainstream, whatever the mainstream is. There's as much influence from The Simpsons as in the Family Guy as there is in the Flintstones. The Flintstones parodying, the idea of the honeymooners, that idea that Ralph Cramden is Fred Flintstone. You know what I mean? Big and boisterous and big and bad, but in the end, he's just a lovable oaf. He does things you go, it's so dumb. Why would you do that? The same thing can be said all the way down into modern day. The modern day cartoons that are coming on now that are a little more adult themed, that are a little less mainstream.
Saturday morning's cartoons seem to have died, though. They don't seem to exist anymore.
They don't exist anymore. And a lot of that is cost. When you're talking about what was there in the mornings, you had a captive audience that was basically one demographic, so you could do all your advertising for toys. You could do all your advertising, and it would pay for your production. I think that's kind of splintered out now. I think that there's still a group of Saturday morning children who watch television, but not like when I was a kid. Saturday mornings were, you went to church Saturday morning, and it was, you watched cartoons, and you'd have a bowl of, if you're lucky, Captain Crunch or something like that.
Now, when I was a kid, they had a couple of other things. There was T-Bar v. Ranch Time, which was a television show in Louisville on WHAS-TV, Channel 11. And Cactus Tom Brooks and Randy Atcher were the hosts, and kids would come on their birthday. And they would bring them up, they would talk to each of the kids, and they would show cartoons between segments, Looney Tunes cartoons.
Right.
I was on the show twice as a kid. I can still remember riding up in the huge elevator, and it was an old-fashioned kind of elevator with some kind of crosshatch door, you know,
right.
And it was maybe like a freight elevator, I don't know. And
we'd call those death traps nowadays.
Then there was a show in the afternoons on WDRB Channel 41 in Louisville called Presto the Clown. And if you go back and find video of it today, it's almost scary in a way. If you're afraid of clowns, Presto would scare the shit out of you because I mean, that's just and again, he would show Looney Tunes cartoons. But people who are afraid of clowns do not like Presto.
Yeah, and you know, we had something kind of like that. I actually got to watch Bozo out of Chicago on WGN. You know, I came of age in the time of the superstations. So TDS, TNT, and WGN, and your local TV was all you got. I mean, that was what your television looked like. But I think as we look at it now, what's happened to cartoons is that they've shifted from being a children's only. The Simpsons made it where it was children and family, and it's slowly gone older. And now to the point now where you've got Cartoon Network, you've got Adult Swim, which you have stuff like Rick and Morty. You've got Archer. You've got all these adult-themed cartoons that are really funny, but I would not put my kids in front of the television to watch. And that's something that's drastically changed from the time when we were kids. When we were kids, cartoons were for kids. Grown-ups would tolerate them and, you know, whatever. But now it's almost to the point where, all right, cartoons are for grown-ups. The kids need to have something else. And I wonder if that's something that you've noticed as well.
Well, that's definitely the case. I do want to mention two more, Yogi Bear. And, you know, a lot of people remember Tom and Jerry. I hated Tom and Jerry. Much better was Pixie, Dixie, and Jinx the cat. They were much better.
That's the Sam's Choice of cartoons, is what you're talking about. I'm going to tell you, Tom and Jerry was awesome.
It was horrible.
Tom and Jerry was awesome. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because it wasn't just Tom and Jerry. It was Tom and Jerry and an occasional kangaroo that looked like a mouse that would just screw with Tom. And then you'd have Spike the dog, which was this bulldog that loved to get up in Tom's face. There's so much good stuff with Tom and Jerry. I can't believe you don't like it.
Oh, I hated Tom and Jerry. It was horrible.
Oh, it was fantastic. Fantastic. All right, so what's the next one?
Your turn.
Oh, okay. So when we talk about the changeover in my generation, one of the ones that comes to mind is something like Rugrats. Now, Rugrats starred Tommy Pickles and his friends as babies, and they would break out and have adventures and do baby things. And, you know, one of those that when I was a kid watching it on Nickelodeon after school, that was one that always stuck out. And Rugrats was a great show because it was just as much for adults as it was for kids. So I've had the ability to grow up with it and get that they were joking about other things.
Fraggle Rock, my kids loved that. And the Smurfs.
See, but I don't know if I'd call Fraggle Rock a cartoon.
Why not?
It's puppets.
Well, I would include puppets, and for the one that leaps out to me is Davy and Goliath. It was a puppet cartoon,
right,
for lack of a better way to put it, and the stories were all very wholesome, and it revolved around God. They were presented by the Lutheran Church. I thought it was terrific.
Well, and now, if I'm going to bring up, this one's my last one, and it's possibly the most influential for me personally.
Okay.
Animaniacs.
Not familiar with it.
If you get a chance, watch Animaniacs. So it's about 3 rejected cartoons who were locked up in the Warner Brothers water tower because they were crazy. They caused too much trouble. They just couldn't be trusted. And so they run amok on the Warner Brothers lot. What was great about it is how they broke it up into segments. So you had Chicken Boo, which was a chicken that would find itself in human situations, and people all thought he was human up until the very end. At no point does the chicken do anything other than be a chicken. It's this surrealistic concept of, okay, that's hilarious. You know, at one point, Chicken Boo is a race car driver. Everybody thinks Chicken Boo is a race car driver. Okay, they put him in the car, they put him in... That's all it does. It's a chicken. It is a chicken. Nobody else seems to notice this. They put him in the fire suit. They put him in the car. He drives the car. He gets done. They go, oh, my God, it's a chicken. And he goes, and walks off. That's the premise of that segment, and it's fantastic. And then the other ones were like Dot's Poetry Corner. So Dot is one of them, and they would make fun of beatnik poets that with funny, and it was just fantastic. If you get a chance, watch some Animaniacs. The best segment of Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain. 2 laboratory rats bent on world conquest. They're Pinky and the Brain.
Danger Mouse. Danger Mouse was freaking awesome. I can't believe I forgot Danger Mouse.
Oh, my gosh. Well, here's the thing about cartoons. Anybody can have their favorite cartoons. And I know that we've missed some. I know that I've missed some. What I want people to do is let us know on the Facebook page, wherever you see this, give us an idea of what we've missed, because cartoons are, let's just say it, they're the lifeblood of a modern democracy. You can't have a world without cartoons. And
now I'm going to do something that will break the rules of the show. But since we make the rules, who cares?
We could put it to a vote, but I'm pretty sure it would just split.
Got to see one of my favorite movies the other day, Being There. If you've never seen it, watch it.
Is it a cartoon?
No.
Oh, my God, you broke the rules! That's all right. So Being There. All right, I'll check it out and see what it goes on. Let us know if we've missed anything. I'm sure we have.
That brings to a close this edition of the Improbability Engine.